The frost cracked under his boots like shattered glass. Each step into the barn echoed, swallowed by the vast, hollow silence. The air hung thick with the scent of old hay and dust motes dancing in the weak winter light, slicing through a high window. Wind whistled through a gap in the boards, a lonely sound that seemed to seep into the bones. Empty stalls yawned on either side, dark mouths holding only ghosts and shadows. Michael stopped. His breath fogged the air. What do you do when the only thing left of someone you loved is a horse they left behind? He hadn't wanted to come, had fought it. But the lawyer's letter had been insistent. Property of the estate requires immediate attention, Frisian stallion, unsuitable for sale in current condition. Current condition. The words tasted like ash. Images flickered unwanted. Flashing lights on wet asphalt, the crumpled metal tomb of the horse trailer, the unbearable stillness afterwards. His brother, Alex, gone. And this was what remained. Not the shared laughter, the easy confidence, the quiet understanding between them. Just a horse, a living, breathing monument to the absence that now hollowed Michael out. He moved, deeper into the gloom, the cold biting through his worn jacket. His hands, usually steady, felt clumsy. He jammed them into his pockets. Grief wasn't a shout for him. It was this constant low hum beneath the surface, a vibration that made the world feel slightly unreal. He saw Alex in the slant of the weak sunlight, in the curve of a rusty bucket handle, in the overwhelming silence that wasn't just the absence of sound, but the absence of him. Then, at the far end, a shadow shifted. Massive, darker than the surrounding gloom. Michael froze. He hadn't seen it at first, blending seamlessly into the deep corner of the last stall. Now, details emerged. The impossibly long, feathered mane, tangled and matted, falling like a black waterfall over a powerfully arched neck. The thick, flowing tail, dust-coated. And the eyes, large, liquid brown eyes that caught the faint light and held it, reflecting back not fear, not aggression, but a profound, unsettling stillness. An ocean of quiet sorrow. The stallion stood perfectly motionless, a statue carved from night itself. Only the faintest plume of vapor from his nostrils betrayed life. He didn't snort, didn't shift his weight, just looked. It wasn't defiance, it was waiting, as if the world had ended and he was the only witness left standing. Michael's throat tightened. This wasn't just a horse. This was a creature steeped in the same terrible event that had shattered his own life. He saw the faint, jagged line of a healing scar tracing down the stallion's left shoulder, disappearing into the thick winter. Coat. A souvenir from the crash. A physical echo of the trauma. The horse's stillness felt heavy, charged. Not peaceful. Resigned. Like a mountain holding its breath. He took a step forward. Then another. His boots scuffed softly on the concrete. The horse's ear flicked minutely backwards, a small, precise movement. A warning? A question? Michael stopped again, maybe 10 feet from the stall door. He could see the powerful muscles tense beneath the dark coat. The Frisian's head remained high, regal even in neglect, but the stillness now felt brittle, fragile. Michael remembered Alex's voice years ago, talking about this very horse, Orion. Got the heart of a lion, Mikey, and eyes like they've seen the whole damn story. He hadn't understood then. He thought he did now. Slowly, deliberately, Michael lowered himself. Not to a crouch, but just sinking his weight, making himself smaller, less threatening. He kept his gaze soft, unfocused, looking towards the horse's shoulder rather than directly into those deep, watchful eyes. He didn't speak. Words felt hollow here, an intrusion. The only sounds were the wind's mournful whistle and the rhythmic, deep sigh of the stallion's breathing. In, out. A slow, steady drumbeat in the silence. Minutes stretched. The cold seeped deeper into Michael's joints. His own breath hitched slightly, the familiar ache in his chest flaring. He focused on the horse's breath. In, out, trying to match it. A shift, almost imperceptible. Orion's massive head lowered a fraction, not submissively, curiously. Those dark eyes, impossibly intelligent, studied Michael, not just his body, but something deeper. The stillness in the horse seemed to deepen, becoming less like a wall and more like attention. Focused, quiet attention. Michael felt strangely exposed, as if the animal could see the raw edges of his grief, the hollow space Alex had left. He stayed perfectly still, his own grief a heavy cloak around him. He didn't know how long he sat there, breathing with the horse in the cold silence. Time lost meaning. The world narrowed to the scent of dust and horse, the feel of the cold, concrete beneath him, and the profound, watchful presence of the dark stallion. He found his hand moving slowly, almost of its own accord, towards the stall door. Not reaching, just resting open, palm up, on the top rail. An offering. Empty. Orion watched the hand. His nostrils flared wide, drawing in Michael's scent. Leather, cold, salt tears unshed, and the deep, unmistakable tang of sorrow. The horse shifted his weight, a soft shuffle of hooves on straw. He took one step forward, then another. Deliberate, cautious. He stretched his neck, impossibly long and graceful, bringing his velvety muzzle closer to the offered hand. Michael held his breath. He could feel the warm puff of the horse's exhale against his skin. Orion's nostrils flared again, exploring the air just above Michael's palm. The massive head tilted slightly, one dark eye fixed on Michael's face. Searching. Then the softest touch, like velvet. The horse's muzzle, warm and impossibly gentle, brushed the back of Michael's knuckles. Not a nudge, not a demand. A whisper of contact. A tentative question mark hanging in the frozen air. Michael didn't pull away. He didn't move. He just felt it. The warmth, the softness, the fragile connection bridging the abyss of their shared loss. It wasn't comfort, not yet. It was recognition. Two broken things acknowledging the break in the other. The touch lingered for a heartbeat. Two. Then Orion slowly withdrew his head, settling back on his haunches, his gaze never leaving Michael's face. The stillness returned, but it felt different now, charged with something new. Not just shared sorrow, but the faintest, almost imperceptible spark of something else. Something wary, yet curious. Michael slowly lowered his hand, the ghost of that velvet touch still warm on his skin. He pushed himself up, his muscles stiff with cold and tension. He needed air, needed space away from the overwhelming weight of this encounter, this living reminder of everything torn away. He turned to leave, the frost cracking again under his boots as he walked back down the barn aisle, away from the dark stallion standing, sentinel in the shadows. The wind moaned, the emptiness pressed in. He reached the barn door, the weak winter light blinding after the gloom. He pushed it open, the hinges groaning. Cold air slapped his face. He stepped out, bracing himself against the chill, ready to flee back to his own silent, empty apartment. But he paused. Something. A sound, or the lack of one. He turned, just a fraction, looking back into the cavernous darkness of the barn. And there, at the edge of the light spilling from the doorway, stood Orion, not pressed against the stall door, not whinnying, just standing, watching him go. The horse's head was lowered slightly now, the long mane falling forward, obscuring one eye. The other eye, dark and liquid, held Michael's gaze across the distance. It wasn't pleading. It wasn't demanding. It was a silent, profound question hanging in the cold air between them. Why was he leaving? Where was Alex? And why, in this vast, echoing emptiness filled only with ghosts and cold wind, did the man who smelled like shared sorrow turn away? Michael stood frozen on the threshold, caught between the biting cold outside and the unbearable silent question radiating from the shadows within. He had come to deal with property. He hadn't expected the property to look back with eyes that held the echo of his own shattered heart. He hadn't expected. The silence after Michael left the barn door open felt heavier than the winter cold. Orion remained at the edge of the shadows, a dark sentinel watching the retreating figure. Michael didn't look back again. He drove away, the image of those liquid eyes, holding a question he couldn't answer, burned onto his retinas. Property. That's all the horse was supposed to be. An obligation. A painful artifact. Not a creature whose stillness echoed the hollow space inside his own chest. Yet, Michael found himself returning. Not the next day, but the day after that. And the one after. It wasn't duty, not really. It was a pull, quiet but insistent, like the memory of a melody he couldn't quite place. He'd bring hay, fresh water, spend long minutes just sitting on the cold concrete floor outside Orion's stall, breathing in the dusty air. The Frisian remained wary, a statue carved from midnight and sorrow. But sometimes when Michael spoke softly, recounting mundane details of his day, the stubborn leak in his apartment sink, the overly sweet coffee at the diner, Orion's ears would swivel minutely towards the sound. A subtle shift, a flicker of attention in the profound stillness. Then came the triggers, small things, like landmines hidden in the hay. One gray afternoon, Michael was mucking out the adjacent stall, the rhythmic scrape of the shovel a monotonous counterpoint to the wind. He muttered aloud, frustration bleeding into his tone. Stubborn. Damn thing, just like... He caught himself. Just like Alex. He didn't say the name. He never said the name here. But the thought hung, sharp and sudden, in the air. From Orion's stall came a sound Michael had never heard before. A sharp, explosive snort, followed by a violent shake of the massive head. The horse backed swiftly to the far wall, eyes wide, showing white. Not aggression, panic, pure, unadulterated terror. He stood trembling, muscles rigid, nostrils flaring as if smelling smoke. Michael froze, shovel forgotten, the echo of his own unfinished sentence ringing in his ears, just like Alex. Had the horse known? Recognized the shape of the thought, the ghost of the name carried on Michael's breath? Another time, Michael arrived carrying an old, worn saddle blanket he'd found in the tack room, intending to use it for extra warmth in Orion's stall. It was nondescript, faded blue wool. The moment the scent of it, mingled with old leather and dust, reached Orion's nostrils, the horse stiffened. Not fear this time. Something deeper. A profound stillness descended, heavier than before. Orion lowered his head slowly, deliberately, until his velvet muzzle touched the blanket Michael had draped over the stall door. He inhaled deeply, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to draw the essence of the fabric into his lungs. Then a low, guttural sound vibrated in his chest. Not a whinny, not a groan, but a sound of pure aching loss. A sound that mirrored the silent scream trapped in Michael's own throat since the day of the crash. Michael watched, his own breath caught, a cold dread seeping into his bones. Whose blanket had this been? The questions coiled tighter, a silent pressure building behind Michael's ribs. Why did Orion react to the thought of Alex? Why did an old blanket evoke such raw grief in the animal? The lawyer's sparse details haunted him. Trailer crash, single fatality, horse survived with minor injuries. Orion's scar was visible, but what scars were hidden? What had the horse seen? Michael found himself avoiding the tack room, its shadows filled with ghosts. He started talking more, filling the barn's silence with hesitant words. About his own deployment overseas, the dull throb of survivor's guilt that never quite faded, the way the world felt too loud and too quiet at the same time since Alex died. Orion listened, always listening. The stillness around him began to feel less like a wall and more like a held space. The breaking point came on a day thick with unshed snow. Michael arrived later than usual, the sky bruised purple with twilight. He carried a box he'd finally forced himself to open. Alex's things from the glove compartment of the wrecked truck. Meaningless debris, a faded gas receipt, a half-eaten pack of gum, a scratched pair of aviator sunglasses, and a small, leather-bound notebook, water-stained and warped. Michael hadn't been able to open it before. Tonight, leaning against the cold wood of Orion's stall door, the silence pressing in, he cracked the cover. Alex's handwriting, bold and slanting, leaped off the page. Not work notes, not a ledger. Orion today, pure magic. Took the new trail by the creek. He spooked at a damn plastic bag but came back to me quick, solid, trusted me. Page after page. Training notes, yes, but woven through with something else. Affection. Pride. Can't believe he's mine. This horse, he sees me. The real mess. Doesn't care. Michael's vision blurred. He flipped another page. Bad night. Dreamt of the sand again. The heat, the dust, couldn't breathe. Went out to the barn at 3 a.m. Orion just stood with me. Didn't nudge, didn't ask, just breathed. Heavy and slow. Like an anchor. Let me lean on him until the shaking stopped. Saved me tonight, again. The words hit Michael like shrapnel. Alex, his vibrant, fearless brother, haunted, saved in the dark hours by the quiet presence of this massive black horse. Michael hadn't known. Alex, who always seemed so strong, so together. He'd carried his own desert storms, silent and unseen, and found solace not in people, but in the steady breath of an animal. The revelation tore through Michael's carefully constructed numbness. He saw it all. Alex waking, gasping, stumbling to the barn, pressing his forehead against Orion's warm neck, the horse standing immovable, a bulwark against the internal chaos, the shared solitude, the unspoken understanding. A sob ripped from Michael's throat, raw and ugly. Then another. He slid down the stall door, his back scraping against the wood, the notebook falling from his grasp into the dirty straw. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders heaving. The grief he'd dammed up, the guilt, the crushing weight of Alex's hidden pain and his own utter failure to see it, crashed over him in a relentless wave. He wept for the brother he idolized but never truly knew, for the silent battles fought, alone, for the unbearable finality of it all. The sounds echoed in the cavernous barn, harsh, broken, utterly human. He didn't hear the stall door open, didn't hear the soft shuffle of enormous hooves on the concrete aisle. He only felt it, a warmth, an immense, solid presence settling beside him on the floor. Not touching. Just there. Close enough that Michael could feel the radiant heat from Orion's massive body cutting through the barn's chill. He could hear the deep rhythmic sigh of the horse's breathing. In, out, slow, steady, an anchor in the storm of his own unraveling. Michael didn't look up. He kept his face hidden, tears soaking his sleeves, the ragged sobs shaking his frame. Orion didn't move, didn't nudge, didn't whinny. He simply stood sentinel, his large, warm head lowered slightly, his breath stirring the hair on top of Michael's bowed head, a soft puff of air. Then silence. just the profound, patient presence, the unwavering steadiness, the silent message, I am here. Your storm is not too big. I will stand with you until it passes. Minutes bled into each other. Michael's sobs gradually subsided into shuddering breaths, then into an exhausted, hollow silence. He felt drained, scraped raw, but the crushing weight, it felt different, shared, borne not just by him, but by the immense, quiet creature, standing vigil beside him in the gathering dark. Weeks bled into months. Winter's grip loosened, replaced by the hesitant green of spring pushing through the thawing earth outside the barn. The rhythm of Michael's visits changed. He wasn't just tending to property anymore. He was building something, slowly, painstakingly. He learned to brush Orion's thick, tangled coat, the Frisian standing patiently, eyes half closed, occasionally turning his head to lip gently at Michael's sleeve. He learned the language of ears and eyes, the subtle shift in weight that meant curiosity, the soft nicker that greeted his truck pulling in. The profound stillness remained part of Orion, but it was no longer brittle. It felt grounded, peaceful. One soft May morning, sunlight streaming golden through the open barn doors, Michael was grooming Orion in the aisle. A veteran friend of his, Mark, who walked with a permanent limp and eyes that held too many miles, had come out. Mark leaned against a post, watching quietly, a familiar tension in his shoulders. Michael murmured to Orion, running the brush over the powerful shoulder where the scar had faded to a silver seam. Easy, big man. Just Mark. He's okay. Orion turned his head, his dark, intelligent eyes resting on the new human. Not wary. Assessing. Calm. Mark shifted, the movement stiff. A car backfired on the distant road. Mark flinched hard, his hand flying to his chest, his breath catching. Before Michael could react, Orion moved, not startled, deliberately. He took 2 slow steps towards Mark, blocking the open barn door with his massive body, creating a shield from the outside world. Then he lowered his magnificent head, gently, until his velvety muzzle hovered near Mark's clenched fist. He blew softly, a warm, rhythmic puff of air against Mark's knuckles. Mark froze, eyes wide, locked onto the horse's deep, calm gaze. The panic in his eyes flickered, then began to recede, replaced by a dawning wonder. Slowly, hesitantly, Mark uncurled his fist. Orion nudged gently, insistently, until Mark's trembling fingers sank into the thick forelock between his ears. Mark's shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in release. A long, shuddering sigh escaped him. "Oh," he breathed, the single word thick with disbelief and a dawning sense of peace. "Oh." Michael watched, a lump forming in his throat. He saw it. Then with sudden, piercing clarity, the scars, the stillness, the profound capacity for patience and presence. Orion wasn't just Alex's solace. He was born for this. Tempered by fire and loss, carrying the weight of trauma not as a burden, but as a map. A map to guide others through their own storms. This horse, this survivor, wasn't just healing Michael. He was becoming a beacon, a quiet, steadfast hero, in a world full of noise and pain. Later, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, Michael stood with Orion in the paddock. The Frisian grazed peacefully, the picture of strength and serenity. Michael reached into his pocket, his fingers closing around the small, water-stained notebook. He pulled it out, flipping to the last entry Alex had written. The ink was smudged. The words simple. Took Orion to the VA stables today. Saw Jenkins smile for the first time in months. This horse, he's not just mine. He's got a bigger purpose. Gonna make it official. Therapy work. Feels right. Michael looked up at Orion, the horse lifting his head, dark eyes meeting his. Alex hadn't just left behind a horse. He'd left behind a legacy. A healer. a quiet giant who spoke the language of brokenness and knew the path back to stillness. The purpose Alex had seen, the purpose Orion had carried through the wreckage, had finally found its way. Not through grand gestures, but through the simple, unwavering act of standing present in the storm. The spring breeze carried the scent of fresh earth and apple blossoms. Michael placed his hand flat against Orion's warm neck, feeling the powerful life thrumming beneath the dark coat. He thought of Alex, of Mark's unclenched fist, of the countless silent battles fought in the dark. He thought of the trailer crash that should have ended everything, but instead forged something unexpected, something necessary. Orion blew softly, a warm breath against Michael's cheek, his gaze deep and knowing. In that quiet communion, Michael understood the final hidden gift. It wasn't just about healing others. It was about realizing that carrying the weight of love and loss doesn't break you. It shapes you. And sometimes the deepest healing comes not from forgetting the storm, but from finding the one who teaches you how to stand steady within it. The one who reminds you that even in the wreckage, purpose can bloom, quiet and strong, like wildflowers, pushing through cracked concrete. Sometimes the bravest heroes don't charge into battle. They stand beside you in the quiet aftermath, breathing steady until you remember how to breathe again. If this story of a broken horse and the broken souls he helped mend touched your heart, do us a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button. Stories like Orion's Land right here every week. Leave a comment below. Tell us what moment hit you hardest. And tap the bell icon so you never miss the next true tale of unexpected healing and hope. Because sometimes the most powerful therapy has 4 legs and a heartbeat. Share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone.